Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Pop Culture Therapy. It's Advent Nebula.
And Cruellica Kain.
The last time we touched on isekai, we're going to continue with the anime trend this time. And the never-ending debate. The one that you just see your social media go on and on about. And it's also one that seems to be kind of rooted in the social media aspect as well.
And it divides friends.
Yeah, it
on
does.
Their preferences. It's like, really?
And for people like us that actually do watch in both English and Japanese, we've actually learned to spot bad Japanese acting. Where you try to convince people on this that it exists and they will flat out deny it. It's the battle of, I only watch it subbed, I only watch it dubbed, or do I watch both?
And so, obviously, the argument between subbed and dubbed tracks has been going on since, I would say, really the first time Godzilla came to the Americas.
Yeah, or the Shaw Brothers films when they were getting their dubs.
Exactly. So, anytime a movie has gone to a new country that is not of the same language, there is this argument of dubbing versus subbing. And anime is the biggest culprit because we have two foundations. We have companies like Funimation, Viz, who will generally dub all of their shows. Generally. Obviously, there's outliers. Then you have places like Crunchyroll that streams primarily subtitled.
But now that they're part of Sony, we're going to be seeing a change of that coming into the guard with that acquisition being approved by the U.S. government. Who knows how that's going to change in July.
And then you have also
Sentai Filmworks and Media Blasters,
who primarily just leave it in Japanese.
Now Sentai will go back and dub something to resell it when they know that they need to renew the license.
For like a huge premium.
Yeah.
So, but the battle of the languages has always been one of those things. And when I mean it divides friends, we have one of our friends that we play board games with a lot. He only watches it in Japanese. And he's not the only one I know.
Yeah.
There are many people I know who only watch it in Japanese because it's the original. It's how it was meant to be performed and experienced.
And yet, there's us who watch Tokusatsu. And some of these Tokusatsu actors are also anime voice actors. And let's just say their acting is... Ugh.
And it's not to say that having a dub track
takes away from anything.
And here's the funny thing, and I've said this to many people, and they give me a dirty look when I say it. All anime is dubbed.
Which is true.
It's only a matter of if it's dubbed in English,
dubbed in Japanese, dubbed in Spanish, dubbed in Portuguese.
Because there is, so when I think of like original language versus dubbing, I really truly think of live action movies.
Or Squid Game being the biggest example of a more recent one, which has also ignited a whole debate upon itself.
Oh, yes. But so the argument is the original or the English track. So sub or dub. And I find it fascinating that we have this battle continuously. And it's gotten worse recently.
Ever since the Vic Mañana debacle.
Well, that has made it worse. Because more English voice actors have lost their damn minds.
Yeah.
COVID has not been good for these people. Because
a lot of them are...
Even one of our friend voice actors, I'm not going to name names, she smokes and drinks a lot.
And they've had to put in studios in their own houses because they can't actually physically go.
And she refuses to do the studio in her own house. She will do it. She has become like super crazy Republican.
Yeah.
And not that she does like big roles all the time. But when I last saw her at a convention here in Colorado, and she was spinning a yarn, I was like, oh my God, COVID has made her a Republican. And there is nothing wrong with somebody having political affiliations. What I mean is she became very vocal about her conspiracies that were incorrect about...
And Twitter has not been kind to these English voice actors when it comes to their political views.
And in all honesty, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people do have this battle. Because for a lot of our Japanese voice actors that we listen to, be it in tokusatsu, anime, or anything, and we talked about this within our gatekeeping episode because they have to be very strict on how they present themselves, represent themselves, or anything. And so we don't know a lot about their personal lives. So they could be batshit insane. We would never know. Where in America, everybody's on Twitter, so we know if they're insane.
Yeah.
But what I mean by that is because we don't know a lot of what's going on in their individual personal lives because it's not public. We have this higher regard for our Japanese voice actors because they have been doing it for decades. Like, Luffy's voice actors, Goku's voice actors have been doing this for at least 40 years.
Joji Nakata. Look at how long he's been doing it.
He's been doing it for about 50 years. So they've been around an incredibly long time, whereas many of our American counterparts...
You have three separate different groups. The ones that started back when Harmony Gold and Streamline existed. Then you have the era of Ocean and ADV, and now you have the modern era ones.
And I think the modern era ones is like this big boom, because everybody thinks, oh my God, you can make it easy in the world of anime. Which some can, some can't. And, but because we have this higher perspective of what we view on a pedestal our Japanese counterparts, a lot of people tend to prefer the original I say original Japanese track because most of them were aired originally in Japan. So they prefer that because they feel like it's special.
Yeah. Then you have where Seishiro Watanabe has actually come out and said he has preferred the English dub. The manga author for Yu Yu Hakusho has said he's preferred the English dub.
There's many that have said they preferred the English dub because sometimes with the English dub, there's a lot more emotion that goes into it. There's a lot more acting.
Yeah, if you actually look on how Western trained actors are versus Japanese trained actors are trained, there's a very big difference because Japanese acting overemphasizes the exaggeration aspect of, and when it comes to acting, where Western acting is more on the emotional aspect.
And now, to be fair, a lot of the more modern animes that have been dubbed in the States are not as great.
Especially because of the churn-out factor.
Because of the churn-out factor and because of the fact that you're getting a lot of newer voice actors and actresses that haven't been trained.
Yeah.
They're fans that...
Or in a lot of the cases, what we're starting to see, they're YouTubers.
And obviously we're on YouTube. We don't make our entire livings on YouTube because we're realists.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you want to share our videos and make us boom, cool. I'll live on the beach and not work in a regular job for the rest of my life. That would be awesome. But in reality, for at least the two of us, we have a normal living.
Yeah.
And this is just more for entertainment purposes. Now, some of these YouTubers who become voice actors, do I think they deserve that shot? I'm a little iffy on it.
There's some that have proven themselves, like Kylie McNeil. She's proved herself. Mm-hmm. And then there's others that you're just looking at, why is this Twitch streamer doing this? What?
Well, exactly. And so I have a very... So the reason I say that is because giving that background of it, the battle of languages is getting worse now because of the fact that even with anime conventions, you can now meet your voice actors. And that, to me, actually, that takes away some of the specialness of it.
Yeah, especially people like us who just, a lot of the ones that are of our generation just as normal people, because we become friends with several of them.
Well, absolutely. I'm friends with many of the voice actors that you hear in a lot of shows. And I appreciate every one of them, and I value our friendships. But
they're of what I like to call that heyday of the ADV, the Ocean Group, and Bandai when it still existed. That's where a lot of them made their fame. So they aren't of the newer generation that's getting a lot of flack.
And for me, well, some of the older generation is getting a lot of flack because we know who they are.
Yeah.
But it's hard because we look at them as regular people, and when we watch the shows, we can tell their voices, and we still enjoy it. Now, the reason why I think the two of us don't really have anything in this battle is because, for us specifically, we don't care one way or actually, I'll speak for myself. I don't care one way or another if it's in English or Japanese, as long as the quality is good and the acting at least emotes what I need from the show.
Yeah, and that's what I basically go by on that too, is what's the quality. And you can tell by the language tracking, it's because of the years and years we've watched stuff in both languages, we're able to pick up on the nuances of when there's a bad acting performance. And especially when it comes to on the Japanese side, you can tell the Toku actors that have an acting background that's experienced versus the Toku actors that were either in the idol industry or were doing something else before they ended up in the voice acting industry.
Well, and it's the same thing even on the English side. Yeah. Like, for a perfect example is Rosario the Vampire. That series, now obviously there's many arguments you can have on that series alone because of it being so incredibly different from the manga, but taking the anime just from the language tracks alone, the Japanese language track, you could tell they had fun.
Yeah.
They were not taking their jobs overly seriously. They still had respect like they do, because Japan, no matter what they do, they respect the process and respect their responsibilities. The American track
was flat.
Was kind of like Gilgamesh when that came to America. The English track was like nails on a chalkboard. If you buy this series because you like it, you're not going to enjoy a language track.
Yeah.
Which is a disappointing thing to say, because yes, we expected that from the 80s and early 90s. Actually, no, I would say up to about 94, 95.
Yeah, it's around the time Tenchi came out and really changed dubbing, but Tenchi did the smart thing and they hired theater actors.
Exactly, which Ocean Group was a lot of theater acting and things like that, too.
Ocean Group, Nav Post, which did Tenchi, that was where they got that, and then you started seeing that trickle in.
Exactly. Once you had more quality, then that changed the name of the game with anime. And that's when the battle really started. And the reason it's getting worse now is because you have in America now, and I say America more so because with Funimation, they're popularizing it.
And not only that, Ocean Group, basically everybody from there has now gone down to Texas.
Exactly. But you have what's called simuldubbing. So simuldubbing, everybody probably should know this, but basically both audio tracks
are recorded within days of each other.
And released within days of each other. Now, with the pandemic, some of the American simuldubs have been delayed a couple of weeks.
And Crunchyroll's now teamed up with Bang Zoom to do their simuldubs, but they end up waiting until the show's season's complete, and then they start doing the dubbing.
And so when you have the simuldub aspect, you can see how people handle the rush quality. And you can actually tell by the language track alone.
Yeah, and you can tell the scriptwriter, when they were translating, was on a deadline.
Exactly. And you can even tell this on the Japanese side as well. So look at some of your favorite shows. I'm actually going to use Toilet Bound Hanako-kun because I've watched both languages. The Japanese track, even though it's a rush job as well, and you can tell in certain aspects, the performances are spot on. The American track, while they're good, you can actually feel some of the flatness. And this is where the battle, that's why the battle is increasing. Because you don't have the time to make it good. And what Japan does is they will fix some of their voice acting after the season is done. Same thing with animation. They will clean up animation, they will clean up voice acting for their distribution.
Funimation is 50-50 based on what the streaming ratings have if they're going to fix it for the Blu-ray release.
And sometimes even then, they still don't. So that also harms the pro-dubbing side of the battle because the dub fans, they obviously, if you love dub, you're not going to care.
Yeah.
You're gonna be ride or die with it no matter what.
It shows that, like Demon Slayer, which are expected to perform, where they've waited to dub it because they knew they were going to be getting it on TV.
Mm-hmm. And so the battle is really on how much you're going to defend it. And when you have someone, especially on the sub-only side, they're more vocal, I feel.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're actually to the point where they sometimes say you're not a real anime fan if you don't watch it subtitled.
Yeah. They say if you even watch a dub and you're betraying it. Where I'm going, yeah, that show you're watching though, and I'm going to be using My Hero. I've seen and heard some pretty flat performances on the Japanese side because of the rush jobs you can tell they're doing with My Hero right now.
But with the American side for My Hero, it's so bombastic.
Yeah. I mean, you're hearing some of with the villain arcs especially, you could tell Himiko's voice actress, she at times was enjoying it, at other times you could tell she was just not into it, where on the American side, you could tell they're just having fun with the dub on it right now.
Well, exactly. And it's always frustrating when you have this battle of language tracks because there is no winner. There's never going to be a winner. And sometimes it gets so like toxic because using anime conventions as an example, they primarily bring in English voice actors because they're local, they're easy to get to a location.
And there's no COVID restriction right now.
So you do that, and I've actually started noticing from a lot of the other anime fans that I will hang out with at a convention, many of them actually don't care about the voice actors because they don't want to meet the voice actors. And some of them actually don't go to the panels because they're voice actor heavy. And if they're going to do it, they want to see the Japanese side.
Which is right now impossible because the restrictions from Japan aren't going to be lifted until June.
And that's best case.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating how the language tracks always become toxic. I think even with our own group of friends it's like that. Because Kaiju, he actually prefers the Japanese tracks. Like, he'll watch dub, don't get me wrong, he enjoys dubs. But he actually likes the Japanese tracks. And he doesn't like it because of the drama but he actually prefers many times their performances.
And there's a nuance to that too.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also helps because he watches so much stuff in Japanese. He's just used to it.
Yeah, and not only that, he does understand about a third of the language, so...
Yeah, he understands. It's actually fascinating how well he picks up languages. Then we have someone like Silverquill. He actually prefers the English because of the fact that he can still understand what's going on.
And he can have it in the background while he's doing something.
Exactly. And admittedly, I will say I take advantage of that sometimes. If it's a series I've watched a dozen times, I'm happy to have the English track running because I can move around and do other things and not have to be solely focused on like, oh crap, I didn't see what they said.
Yeah.
Now, Cruellica, he confuses me.
There's some he will watch only dubbed, some he will only watch subtitled.
No, what confuses me is because we were watching Food Wars when we were exercising with him. He has the subtitle track on while watching the dub.
Which I've never got that either.
And I'm like, if you're going to have the subtitle track on, play it in Japanese. If you're going to play in English, leave the track off.
And there's our one friend Ron who could give a crap either way.
Well, yeah, he's like us. It's like, as long as it's good, I don't care what language it's in.
Yeah. And then I think that also comes down to the fact he's got a foreign film collection from about 30 different countries.
Well, yeah. It helps with us like extreme horror fans because
we'll watch any horror film from any country.
And very rarely does it ever have a dub track.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we're like, okay, it's in Japanese only. That's fine. Oh, they have an English track? Then let me hear that.
Yeah, let me see if this one has a hilarious to it. Just like the old Shaw Brother dubs from the 70s for all those kung fu flicks.
Hey, if I can watch a funny dumpster fire like the dubbed Ultraman movies, then absolutely I'm going to do it.
Well, yeah, I enjoy the dub for Drunken Master because, yes, you had Jackie Chan dubbing himself, but it's everybody else's performance from 3 different people performing all those roles that made it hilarious.
I know. So, you have to, if you are one of those people who prefers one language track over another, like it must be English or it must be Japanese, I think you're losing something because there are certain times, and I can't remember the title now, it's going to bug me, that the anime is so bad in Japan.
Ghost Stories.
Thank you, Ghost Stories. That they bring it over to the United States and they say, have at it. Because Bo 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 Bo, while it is kind of funny in Japan, it is hilarious in America.
Yeah, it was another one where they basically said you can do what you want with the dub track, just make it so it can air on TV.
Exactly. So if you don't allow yourself to see something else, you never know what kind of like amazing experience you'd have. And then same time for those fans that only prefer dubs, think about all the series that have never been dubbed that you're missing out on.
And you're gonna miss out on because there's a lot of classic shows from the 80s and early 90s that are just now coming over. They're never gonna see a dub.
Well, think of all the Gundam series.
Yeah, half of them aren't dubbed.
Even if they were dubbed, they were horribly dubbed.
Yep. And then look at what Discotech's been bringing over the last 2 years.
Exactly. And Discotech and Sentai, because they're kind of part of the same company, they don't always dub all their shows because the cost of bringing those voice actors in, putting a new language track, timing everything properly.
Knowing that you have a classic show that is only going to hit a niche market as it is.
Why spend all that unnecessary money? Because the only time it really happens is like with the recent Kickstarter for Dirty Pair.
Yeah, or an established IP like Sailor Moon.
Exactly. And with Dirty Pair, I was actually surprised it was funded to the degree it was.
Yeah, the fact that it ended up meeting every single stretch goal that it had at $475K, it met.
No, $650K.
$650?
Yeah, I'm part of the Kickstarter, so I have all the details. But things like that amaze me because that show would never get a dub. normally in circumstances. It
Yeah.
would just be released in its original audio track.
Like what Rightstuf did when they released it on DVD. Now it's getting its Blu-ray release. That's why they started that Kickstarter.
Exactly. So you have to be open and allow yourself the freedom to try something different. It's not to say that the other language track is going to be superior. It may most likely not be, no matter which language track you listen to. But you have to give it a shot to at least have fun.
Yeah, and if you've been like us who've watched stuff it's like you said, it's why we could go, We've been able to spot the bad performances because we watch foreign horror movies, and those are notorious for bad.
Oh, well, yes, no matter what language, culture, anything. And I think because we have, just like with kaiju and all of our friends in this group, we're all creatives of some sort. So we can see the good and the bad. I more see it with music than I do sometimes with the performances. But you and kaiju and Silverquill can usually see it with bad acting.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter the language it's in. We can pick up on the nuances from just how the speaking performance is being done, or when we're watching something, from the body language.
Yes. So definitely give any kind of language a shot. But if you are one of those that prefers one or the other, let us know why. Everybody may have a legitimate reason. Maybe, now obviously if you are
one that's all because of the politics, we're not really going to take you that seriously.
No, but if you do it because obviously if you're hearing impaired, obviously you have a legitimate right.
Yeah.
If you're visually impaired, you have a legitimate right. But outside of those situations, definitely let us know. I'd be curious to see why people stand
I have a friend,
on their soapbox.
I have one friend that is audibly impaired. He can only partially hear out of one ear. He's completely deaf in the other. He can only watch stuff subtitled, so I can understand where he's coming from.
And most things at least have closed captioning, but at least with subtitled, you know what you're getting, versus closed captioning, which can be suspect at best. It's much better than it was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
I am just going to say that.
Because they now use YouTube's way of closed captioning on TV now.
Oh, yes. My grandmother was practically deaf, so I watched closed captioning a lot in the 80s. Well, late 80s when it really came to popularity, and then the 90s. And yeah.
Let's just say closed captioning's only been good for the last 5 years since YouTube rolled out its program.
I know, because it was very interpretative. But, so I think that's all we have for the Battle of Languages. Let us know if you have any thoughts, if you have any other episode suggestions. We'd definitely be interested in taking them. Bye!